Picture this. It's Monday morning, 6:45 a.m., and you're sitting in your car in bumper-to-bumper traffic on the highway, the same highway you drive every single weekday. You've got your coffee in the cup holder, and you're listening to a podcast trying to convince yourself this commute isn't that bad. 35 minutes each way could be worse, right? Some people drive an hour. You merge into the left lane and then back to the right, moving maybe 15 miles per hour, and your brain is doing that thing where it calculates how much longer until you get to the office. Another 20 minutes probably, maybe 25 if this traffic doesn't clear up, and you'll get there at 7:30 a.m., sit at your desk until 5 p.m., then do this whole thing in reverse. What you don't realize while you're sitting there is that you're not commuting to work. You're working for free. That 35 minutes each way, that's 70 minutes total every single day, is unpaid labor your employer has convinced you doesn't count. They get those hours, they get your stress, they get your gas money, and your car maintenance, and the wear on your vehicle, and they pay you exactly $0 for it. You think you make $60,000 a year working 40 hours a week, but when you actually do the math, when you factor in the real cost and the real time of that commute, you're making closer to $45,000. That drive to work just stole a raise you never got. My name is Alicia, and I spend way too much time obsessing over the hidden costs that drain people's bank accounts while they're too distracted to notice. If you've ever looked at your salary and thought this should feel like more money, or if you're exhausted by Friday and you can't figure out why when you're only working 8-hour days, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Most people completely miss something fundamental about commuting. We've been conditioned to think of commute time as this neutral dead zone between our personal life and our work life. It doesn't count as work because you're not at the office yet, and it doesn't count as personal time because you're literally driving to your job. So it just exists in this weird limbo that nobody thinks about. But that limbo is exactly where you're getting robbed. Let me introduce you to Maya. She's 32 years old, and she works in accounting at a mid-sized company, making $65,000 a year. After taxes, she takes home about $48,000, which breaks down to $4,000 a month. Her job is downtown, and she lives in the suburbs because that's where she can actually afford rent, which means the commute is 30 minutes in the morning if she leaves by 6:30 a.m. and 45 minutes in the evening because rush hour traffic is worse going home. She does this 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, because she gets 2 weeks vacation. Now, Maya thinks her work schedule looks like this. She's at the office from 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. with a 1-hour lunch break, which is 8.5 hours at work, 8 hours of actual work time, 40 hours a week. She's a full-time employee making $65,000 for 40 hours of work per week, and that's $31.25 per hour. Sounds pretty good. But watch what happens when we look at Maya's actual schedule, the one that includes all the time her job actually consumes. She wakes up at 5:45 a.m. to shower and get ready for work, which is 30 minutes of grooming labor that only exists because she has a job. She's not showering and doing her hair and picking out professional clothes because she enjoys it. She's doing it because her employer requires her to look presentable. Then she gets in her car at 6:30 a.m. and drives 30 minutes to work, sits at her desk from 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m., then drives 45 minutes home, arriving at 5:45 p.m., and then she spends another 30 minutes decompressing, changing out of work clothes, venting to her partner about her day, checking emails she didn't get to, mentally transitioning from work mode to home mode. Add all that up. That's 12 hours and 15 minutes of Maya's day consumed by her job. 12 hours. And she's only getting paid for 8 of them. Let me show you what this does to her real hourly wage, because the math is brutal. Maya makes $65,000 a year, and after federal taxes, state taxes, and FICA, she takes home $48,000. That's her actual income. Now let's divide that by her actual work hours. 50 weeks times 5 days times 12.25 hours per day equals 3,062 hours per year. 48,000 divided by 3,062 gives us her real hourly wage of $15.67. $15.67. She thought she was making $31.25. The commute cut her wage in half. We're not done though, because commuting costs money on top of stealing your time. Maya drives a Honda Civic, pretty fuel efficient, and she's making that 30-minute drive each way, which is about 25 miles total per day. That's 125 miles per week, 6,250 miles per year just for commuting. At the current average of $3.50 per gallon, and her car getting 35 miles per gallon, that's $625 annually in gas just for driving to work. Gas is only part of the equation, though. There's wear and tear on the vehicle, and the IRS standard mileage rate for 2026 is 67 cents per mile. And they set that number based on what it actually costs to operate a vehicle when you factor in maintenance, insurance, depreciation, all of it. 6,250 miles at 67 cents per mile is $4,187 per year that Maya is spending annually just to get to the place where she earns money. So now her $48,000 take-home is really $43,813 after commute costs. Divided by 3,062 hours, her real hourly wage drops to $14.30. $14.30 for a job that advertised itself as $65,000 per year. The commute didn't just cost her a raise. It cost her half her salary, and she doesn't even realize it because nobody ever does this math. I can already hear what you're thinking. Everyone has to get to work somehow. You can't just complain about commuting. That's part of having a job. And yeah, sure, in the current system, most people do commute. But that doesn't mean the system makes sense. And it definitely doesn't mean you should accept it without understanding what you're actually paying for the privilege. Your employer knows exactly what they're doing. They know you're absorbing the cost of getting to work, and they've structured the entire employment model around the assumption that you'll eat those costs without asking questions. Think about it. When you interviewed for the job, did anyone ask you how far you live from the office? Did they offer to compensate you for your commute? Did they factor in the extra hours you'd spend getting there? No, they made you an offer based on a 40-hour work week, as if you can teleport to the office and back. Meanwhile, they're getting way more than 40 hours of your life every week. They're getting your commute time, which you could have spent learning a skill or working a side gig or sleeping. They're getting your commute money, which you could have invested. They're getting your mental energy, which you're burning up sitting in traffic instead of being present with your family. And they're paying you as if none of that matters. Let me show you what this looks like over a career, because the numbers get genuinely horrifying. Maya started this job when she was 25, so she's been at it for 7 years now, 7 years of commuting 30 minutes in the morning and 45 minutes in the evening. That's 625 hours per year of her life spent in a car, and over 7 years, that's 4,375 hours. Divide that by 24, and you get 182 days. Maya has spent half a year of her life sitting in traffic to get to a job that she could theoretically do from home 3 days a week, but her boss wants everyone in the office because he's old school. And the money, $4,187 per year in vehicle costs times 7 years equals $29,309 that Maya has spent just on the act of getting to work. If Maya had invested that money instead of spending it on commuting, assuming an 8% annual return, she'd have $37,000 right now. She could have had $37,000 working for her, compounding, building wealth, but instead she's got nothing except a car with an extra 43,000 miles on it and a vague sense that something isn't adding up. This is the commute scam in its purest form. You're told that your job pays a certain amount, you're told you work a certain number of hours, but the real numbers paint a completely different picture. The real numbers show that you're working way more hours for way less money than you think. And all that extra time and money is going straight to your employer without them having to pay you a dime for it. Now let's talk about what this does to your life beyond just the money, because the financial hit is only part of the damage. Maya leaves her house at 6:30 a.m. and gets home at 5:45 p.m., which means 11 hours and 15 minutes of every single weekday are consumed by her job. She's got maybe 4 hours before she needs to go to bed to do it all again. 4 hours to make dinner and exercise and spend time with her partner and do laundry and run errands and maybe watch one episode of a show if she's lucky. Her entire life is compressed into 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. On the weekends, she's exhausted. She's been getting up at 5:45 a.m. all week, sitting in traffic, dealing with office politics and deadlines and meetings that could have been emails, so by Saturday morning she doesn't want to do anything productive. She just wants to recover. So she sleeps in and scrolls her phone and maybe runs the errands she couldn't do during the week because everything closes before she gets home from work. Sunday, she's already dreading Monday. The cycle starts again. Think about what the commute really costs when you add it all up. Your energy, your time with people you love, your ability to have hobbies or side projects or any kind of life outside of work. You're spending 12 hours a day on a job that pays you for 8, and the 4 hours you're not getting paid for are some of the worst hours. You're not spending that time doing something fun. You're sitting in a metal box on a highway, breathing exhaust fumes, and watching brake lights. There's also a health cost that nobody talks about, and the research on this is genuinely disturbing. A study from the University of Montreal found that people with commutes longer than 20 minutes have higher blood pressure, higher stress levels, and lower overall life satisfaction. Another study from the UK found that every additional minute of commute time reduces job satisfaction and mental health in measurable ways. You're literally making yourself sick for free, and your employer gets a stressed, exhausted, unhealthy version of you without having to compensate you for the damage. Think about what happens to your body during that commute, because the physical toll adds up faster than you'd think. You're sitting for extended periods, which we know is terrible for your health. You're in a constant state of low-level stress, watching for bad drivers and dealing with traffic jams and trying not to be late. Your cortisol levels are elevated. Your blood pressure is up. And you're doing this twice a day, 5 days a week. Over years, this compounds into real health problems: back pain, weight gain, cardiovascular issues, sleep problems from the stress. And who pays for that? You do. Your health insurance premiums go up, you pay for the doctor visits, you pay for the medication, you pay for the physical therapy for your back that went out from sitting in a car seat for 10 hours a week. Meanwhile, your employer is sitting in their corner office with free parking and a flexible schedule, wondering why employee morale is so low. Let me tell you about the real Maya, the person I actually know who figured this out and did something about it. She was in this exact situation, 30-minute commute each way, making $68,000 a year, thinking she had a pretty good setup. Then one day, she actually calculated what her commute was costing her: the time, the money, the stress, the health impact, and she realized she was basically working for $15 an hour when you factored everything in. So she went to her boss and asked if she could work from home 3 days a week, and she came prepared with a whole presentation showing how her productivity wouldn't drop, how she'd be available during the same hours, how she'd come into the office for important meetings. Her boss said no. He wanted people in the office. It was about culture and collaboration, all the buzzwords managers use when they can't articulate why they need to see you sitting at a desk. She did something next that changed everything. She started job hunting. She found a fully remote position doing basically the same work for $72,000 a year, $4,000 more in salary, 0 commute. She took it. In the first year of her new remote job, everything changed in ways she didn't even anticipate. She was no longer spending $4,000 a year on commuting, which meant that's $4,000 she could save. She was no longer spending 10 hours a week in the car, which meant 520 hours per year she got back to use however she wanted. She used some of that time to start a side business doing freelance bookkeeping, and that brought in another $12,000 the first year. So her effective income went from $68,000 minus $4,000 in commute costs at the old job, which is $64,000, to $72,000 plus $12,000 from freelancing at the new job, which is $84,000. By eliminating her commute, she gave herself a $20,000 raise, $20,000, and she got 10 hours per week of her life back. 10 hours she could spend on literally anything except driving. 3 years later, she's making $95,000 from her main job, plus $28,000 from her side business, which is $123,000 total. Almost double what she was making at the commute job, all because she refused to accept that sitting in traffic for free was just part of having a career. What I need you to understand is that the commute is optional for most people, at least the people watching this video. Not always, sure. Some jobs genuinely require you to be on site, and if you're a nurse or a construction worker or a retail employee, you can't do that from home. But if you work a desk job, if you spend your day on a computer in meetings and sending emails, that commute is a choice your employer is making, and that choice is draining thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours from your life every single year. Calculate your real hourly wage right now. Take your take-home pay after taxes, subtract your annual commute costs, then divide by the total hours your job actually consumes, including commute time and getting ready for work and decompressing after work. What number do you get? Is it higher or lower than you thought? If it's lower, and it probably is, you need to decide if that wage is worth it. Maybe it is. Maybe you love your job and the commute is worth the trade-off, but at least know what you're trading. At least make the decision with accurate information instead of the fantasy your employer sold you about 40 hours a week at a certain salary. And if the number makes you angry, good. Use that anger as fuel. Start looking for remote positions or hybrid positions where you only go into the office twice a week, or jobs that are closer to where you live. Your commute is not inevitable. It's a variable you can change. There's another option that most people never consider: move closer to work. I know that sounds obvious, but hear me out. because when you actually do the math, it's often cheaper than you think. Let's say Maya's rent in the suburbs is $1,500 a month, and she could move to an apartment downtown near her office for $2,000 a month. That's $500 more per month, $6,000 more per year, which sounds expensive until you factor in what she's currently spending. Remember, Maya is spending $4,000 per year just on vehicle costs for commuting. If she lived downtown, she could sell her car entirely. No more car payment, no more insurance, no more gas or maintenance. Let's say her car payment is $300 a month, and insurance is $150, which is $450 per month or $5,400 per year. Plus, the $4,000 in commute costs means she's spending $9,400 per year to live in the suburbs and drive to work. If she moves downtown for $6,000 more in rent, she's actually saving $3,400 after eliminating all car costs. Plus, she gets back those 10 hours a week. She could walk to work, or bike, or take a 10-minute train ride. Her life completely changes, and she's saving money while doing it. Most people never do this math. They see the higher rent and immediately think they can't afford it. But they're not factoring in all the costs they'd eliminate. The second car they don't need, the gas, the parking, the maintenance, the insurance, the time. When you actually run the numbers, living close to work is often cheaper than commuting, especially when you value your time at anything above zero. Think about your commute this way because the frame matters. Every hour you spend in your car is an hour you could spend doing something else, working a side gig, learning a skill that could increase your income, sleeping, exercising, being with your family. If you value your time at even minimum wage, that commute is bleeding real money from your life. And every dollar you spend on commuting is a dollar you can't invest. A dollar that's not compounding. A dollar that's not working for you while you sleep. Over a career that adds up to hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost wealth. The most insidious part of the commute scam is how it normalizes wage theft, because that's what this is when you strip away the polite language. Your employer is getting hours of your life every week without paying you for them. In any other context, we'd call that exactly what it is, theft. If your boss told you to come in 2 hours early every day and work for free, you'd laugh in their face. But when those same 2 hours are disguised as a commute, suddenly it's acceptable. Suddenly it's just part of having a job. The system wants you to think about your job in isolation. They want you to focus on the salary number and ignore everything else. The commute, the dress code, the mandatory happy hours, the expectation that you'll check email at 8 p.m., all the invisible unpaid labor that comes with being employed. But you can't ignore it just because they want you to. Those costs are real. They're coming out of your pocket and your time whether you acknowledge them or not. So acknowledge them, calculate them, make decisions based on reality and instead of the story you've been told about what it means to have a good job. Look at what happens when you refuse to play this game. When you demand remote work, or you move closer to the office, or you take a job that pays slightly less but has zero commute. You're not just saving money and time. You're reclaiming your life in a way that compounds just like interest does. Those 10 hours a week you get back, that's 520 hours a year, which is 65 8-hour workdays. You essentially get an extra 2 months of your life back every single year. What would you do with 2 extra months? You could learn a new language, you could start a business, you could write a book, you could train for a marathon, you could actually spend time with your kids instead of just seeing them for an hour before bed. The opportunity cost of commuting isn't just the money you spend on gas. It's everything you could have done with that time, everything you could have built, everything you could have become. And the wealth impact compounds over decades in ways that will genuinely shock you. Let's say you're 25 years old right now with a 40-year career ahead of you. And if you eliminate a 30-minute commute each way, that's 5 hours a week you're getting back. Over 40 years, that's 10,400 hours, which is 433 full 24-hour days. That's more than a full year of your life that you get back. A full year that you could spend building wealth or relationships or skills or literally anything except sitting in traffic. The $4,000 per year in commute costs invested at 8% over 40 years becomes $1,038,000. $1 million. That's what your commute is actually stealing from you, not the $30 you spent on gas this week, but $1 million in lost wealth over your career, $1 million that could have been working for you instead of going to ExxonMobil and Honda. Maya's commute was costing her way more than a raise. It was draining her health, stealing her time, robbing her wealth, and slowly crushing her spirit with the weight of wasted hours. The question is, what are you going to do about it? You can keep accepting it as normal, keep sitting in traffic, keep pretending that 40 hours a week means 40 hours. Or you can do the math like Maya did and realize you're getting scammed, and then you can do something different. Something that gives you back your time, your money, and your life.